Call the Beaufort County Board of Education special call board meeting, discuss the budget. The date is May 11, 2021. We are in the District Educational Service Center Media Center, and the meeting is being conducted by a hybrid video conferencing, and it is also being live streamed by the county channel. Capacity in the media center is limited to 60 individuals in order to comply with social distancing requirements. Individuals must stay at least 3 feet apart and masks are required. Seating will be on a first-come basis. We had no comments submitted for the public comment section at the beginning of our meeting. So we now need a motion to approve the agenda.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the agenda for the special call meeting.
Thank you. A second. Earl Campbell. All right, the motion to approve the agenda made by Mel Campbell and second by Earl Campbell. Any discussion? All right, voting is open.
Yes.
Not yet.
Not yet.
All right. It's open now.
Yes.
Yes, for Middleton.
Yes, for Roebuck, the last one.
Yes, for Smith.
The agenda is approved unanimously. We will now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The media was properly notified. As I mentioned, there are no public comments submitted. So we will now begin our discussion about the 2021-2022 preliminary budget. Dr. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Dr. Watts. And as we entered into this budget cycle, primary on our mind is the impact that this pandemic is having and the work that lies ahead to accelerate the academic recovery of our students. We know that in terms of early childhood, many parents have opted to keep their pre-K and their kindergarten students at home during this particular year. We know that 7 out of 10 students in grades 3 through 8 are projected by the State Department of Education to be below grade level. We know that high school work is impacted as well, and potentially graduation rates and et cetera. We believe that there's a real need for a multi-pronged approach. We believe that family engagement initiative designed to support families and supporting their children's academic progress is an important component. We want to make sure that we're recruiting high quality talent, compensating our talent in order to assist in their work, but also in terms of retaining that high quality talent. This will require some HR positions that are certainly justified not only by the need, but also by the efficiency study. Additionally, we want to develop the existing talent that we have in order to continue to grow on a regular basis. A long-term strategy to improving outcomes for students is expanding early childhood programming because, as we spoke about a few months ago, 82.7% of kindergartners arrive not ready for kindergarten. And just last week, I shared an important initiative focusing on a continuous improvement model and progress monitoring that we know will require personnel and professional development to support. A lot of work lies ahead to assist our students in that academic recovery. We look forward to engaging in that work. We'll talk a little bit more about the budget at this time. Ms. Crosby.
Good afternoon. Everyone hear me all right? Yeah. Great. It's great to be back before you today. This is our third budget session or conversation. And at the last budget meeting on April 23rd, we presented a budget that included basically proposed state mandates and some of the basic operational costs of the school district. Those were maintenance, insurance, other service contracts like custodial and grounds. So really there was not much in the budget other than state mandated or contractually obligated items. This budget contains more to address some of the strategic goals of the district. And so with that, we get started. And I felt like the best place to start was revenue in this light, because it really, revenue drives the way the amounts in the budget, the amount of expenditures we can approve and expend. So really we're locked into some tight information that's within that category within revenues in order to develop the remainder of the expenditure budget. So there was an interest expressed by this board to let's not do the bare minimum. We want to do more to address student achievement, to address some of the other strategic goals such as recruiting and retention, and really developing their internal talents. So in order to do that, we must incorporate those and reach out for additional resources in the form of other revenue sources. So as we emerge from the pandemic, we need to address those things more than ever before. And so today we're going to talk about the additions that have been made to this budget to address some of those strategic concerns, strategic goals. So one of the things that I want to keep in mind is that we have had a number of challenges this year. This was unlike any other budget year. Most are different from one another, but this one was yet even more even more challenging than ever. So the first thing that one of the items I've listed 3 here: local, state, and the census. So as far as the state legislature is concerned, we have recently been informed. Mr. Murphy is my legislative guru. He is very in tune with what's going on with our legislature and keeps me updated on a daily basis of how what bills are in process, where they're at, whether in committee or House, whether they passed or not. And so just recently, as of, I believe it was yesterday, we received information that the appropriations bill for education is, which was approved by the Senate, has now gone to the House and has been sent to House Ways and Means Committee. So I think you all may have, there's an update in your email from the School Board Association. And so that same information is in that for you as well. So that's a good area to follow what's going on at the state level. So what's difficult is that the state legislature has not completed and will not complete till mid-June, and our budget will need to be certified before then and perhaps go through at least one reading with county council before that date. So this is going to be a very evolving process as we go through the next few months, and it may even, some of the changes may occur in the new fiscal year, and we may have to come back and address those. So, but we can certainly do that. So another piece of news is the census. I wanted to touch on that. Our census data was released. The census data was released last week. And as of yesterday, I received a letter from the South Carolina Department of Revenue and Fiscal Affairs, which does all the calculations. And we received our millage yesterday. Our millage cap is 2.80% of the current year's millage, which is 114 mills. That gives us the 3.2 mills available plus the 4.4 mills that were banked, as you will, from the last year or two. What I'd like to celebrate today is that I was 0.01% off of my estimate. 0.01%. I estimated that our increase would be a very conservative 2.81, and it came in at 2.80. So the calculation is the same. We will get the ability to raise, utilize 3.2 additional mills for this coming school year, if that is the decision of this board. So the last item is the tax delay. The tax bill is going out on March 15th, continues to be a challenge for us. I think it's going to be a challenge through the new year. Not only does it affect this fiscal year, it's going to affect our projections for next fiscal year, and hopefully we'll find some stability in that after by the spring. The county CFO actually recently informed us that the assessor's office does not anticipate having data on the value of the mill until sometime in June. I think that was in the newspaper in the Iowa News sometime last week. And we did anticipate this delay in tax revenue. So the projections I'm showing you today provide updates for the collections that we're actually seeing, the revenues we're seeing in our accounts, but I'm sticking with the 1% growth factor going forward to be very conservative. So but due to lack of information from the assessor's office, and we're going to need to be pretty conservative on those numbers. So that's, you'll see projections today, but they may change slightly as we move forward as well. The next slide is current tax revenues, and I know this is a little busy, but the far right-hand side is the current year, 2021 budget. And so this is talking about the current year only, and current tax revenues are reported in green at 98.5%, and that's as of April 15th data. We've gotten some preliminary April 30th data, but they had not recorded TIF entries yet, so I wasn't comfortable bringing that today. But we do expect there to be an excess this year in tax collections. So as you can see in the far, I should have named these column headings, but 147,560,940, that is the actual amount we've collected so far. And the budget is 149.7 million. So right now we're about 2.2 million short, but an average of the 3 years of collections between April 15th and June 30th have shown to be about $4.8 million that we would collect. And so taking us over the budget by about $2 to $2.5 million. So as you look at in comparison, 2018 and 2017, in years where we were at about 98 or 99% at this point in the year, we had excesses of 2.6 and 3.8 million those 2 years. So I think we're on track for not another, but a year of an excess tax revenue. And so now there is at least one reduction in state revenue for the current year, and that's EFA went down. So it may offset some of that revenue. And so we'll know more, each month, and as we get closer, and I can certainly keep board informed of that. So I think this is a very good thing. So we are able to add funding in within the current millage. And we hope that we'll continue to have that kind of pattern in the future, and preventing any shortfalls as we've seen periodically over the past several years. So that's very good news. The next slide it's about budget revisions since April 23rd. So in our discussions about revenue, this is just revenue. We have seen an improved outlook of local tax revenues, like we just discussed. In this budget, we're revising it to the maximum amount of millage available to the district, and beyond, and allow for increases above and beyond just the bare minimum of mandatory increases and contractual increases. There is a teacher step. It's actually a restoring the teacher step that was lost back in 2011 and 12 school year. So we've been about 10 years and without a salary schedule that properly reflects step increases for many of our staff. So there is funding in this budget, so that those are local items 1 and 2, and then items 3 through 6 are all, all expenditure increases on the revenue side. So teacher step, we should be receiving some funds there. $1,000 increase in the base teacher salary. Bus drivers are specifically indicated in the bill, appropriations bill, as 5% increase. Again, this is still proposed. And health insurance increase is going to be costs that we'll need to assume. So the estimates of items 3 through 5, we're estimating that the cost, we will receive revenues in approximately about 90% of the cost of those increases. So we'll, as we have more information, we'll certainly bring that forward as well. So let's move on to the final revenue slide. And this shows the approved budget for the current school year and the projected actuals. We believe that we are going to see in our projection, we're going to see about a $2 million excess. And so in column C, that is the amounts that you saw on April 23rd. And so the change is in column D. And this is column D has a millage of 7.6 in that. And allows us to receive $10.2 million additional revenue to support the budget. So in the state revenue, we have, just as I mentioned just a moment ago, the additional health insurance cost, the bus driver increase, and the additional $1,000 teacher salary, and those are in the changes column E. And so this provides you some assumptions that we make in the revenue process, but these are pretty critical to allowing us to determine how much to build our budget on. All right, let's move on to expenditures. So the last year's budget, the current year budget was $254.3 million, and that was the starting place for this budget. And we have several major categories that we sort of categorize things into to help make some sense of where the portions of the budget are addressing, which things the budget is addressing. And so state and federal mandates are $7.3 million, staffing allocations $840,000, operational increases $1.6 million, other increases of $2.3, and decreases of $1.2 million. So we were at a point of $265.1 million. And since this was the beginning point, you've seen this slide before. And so the next section is going to be revisions since that date. So the focus of the revisions, really the thing that stuck out the most as a need for an ongoing recurring budget as recurring items was compensation for teachers. So you have already, many of you, or hopefully all of you, had an opportunity to look through this presentation and the handouts that we're providing today. And this is primarily, there is $7 million in this budget for teacher salary increases alone. So that is really, that's an astounding number. It is very encouraging. States providing, mandating some of those increases, and then we're recommending some of our own today. So I'm excited to be in a position to be able to provide information and work through those things with the board and county council eventually to hopefully address some of those most important goals we have. So, and next is student achievement. There's no doubt that is the primary reason we're here. Fortunately, we do have this year some supplemental funds And I have a few slides at the end of this presentation about the CARES Act and ESSER Acts and ARPA Act funding that we've been receiving. Those are primarily dealing with specifically to instruction and learning loss or the facilities that those folks are in and making sure the indoor air quality is good. These items are recurring and will stay with us for many years. Safety and security is another area that we have added back some funding and really took a look very closely at the recommendations of the efficiency study in this version as well. So there are several positions coming out of that recommendation. There's also some district support positions that were either restored or the needs are great to put those positions in place. And then we wanted to make sure that we were aligning the items with our strategic goals. So the next slide is our strategic plan for 2021-24. It's a 5-year plan. Dr. Stratus recently worked with groups of people very diligently and was able to come up with the goals you see here before you of student achievement, teacher and administrative quality, school climate, and gifted and talented were those categories. So you'll see in each of the items that we're mentioning in the slides and in the presentations that we're linking those back to strategic goals. So on the next slide, this slide demonstrates the additional increases that are being recommended as a result of requesting a 7.6 mil rate. So in addition to the step that is currently mandated by the state and was in our initial presentation, in addition to that, a new amount from the state has been is being discussed and is in a bill to increase base teacher salaries by $1,000, which equates to an average of about 2%. So we are anticipating that state mandate. It costs about $1.8 million. And we are proposing to restore the step increase from 2011-12, which would be another $1.5 million. That was waived in 2011-12 and never funded to school districts. So this is something many districts have already restored that step. Not many are still at a point where they haven't restored it as we are at this point. So I think that would be a tremendous advantage for our teachers. Also, we are recommending to raise the max teacher step from 24 years to 25 years. And I'm very excited about that because what that allows us to say is that all teachers will get an increase, even those from 24 years to 44 years. Everyone that's at the top step will get a bump, in addition to the $1,000 base. So I'm very encouraged by that, and I think that will be something very much is very much needed, would be very much appreciated. And of course, we have the cost of living increases for classified administrative staff at 2%. Aligns with the $1,000 teacher base that's being mandated by the state. So it's a similar. I'm comparing it to that sort of increase that is mandated. Also, the anticipated mandate for school bus drivers at a 5% cost of living increase, that cost would be at $180,000. So these total about $4.5 million, just the compensation increases. The next slide is about the efficiency study. So I was able to meet with Alice. She provided the backup efficiency study documentation, and I read through the entire thing, highlighting, circling, and then there's a summary in the back as well. And so although we weren't able to address every single item this year, many of the items are being addressed in these recommendations today. So there are positions, there's a position in instructional services for a director of student services. Human resources, although the efficiency study indicated there was a need for 17 positions, there are 4 that are being addressed here in this budget. In the operations division, there will be 2 positions to support the facilities planning and construction division. and 1 accountant to support the finance department as well. So in the safety and security section, there is only one item, and that is security guards. And this does address the board policy of providing trained and certified security personnel to all schools. So currently we have SROs at all middle schools and high schools and a couple of elementary schools based on the last, some funding from the state in the last year or 2. But this allows us to fill in the gaps of where schools are not currently being served by a security personnel. So this allows us to provide that and meet that and be in compliance with the board policy. And the next slide is student achievement, items that are directly related to student achievement. There are 4 positions requested. There are literacy and math specialists to work directly with teachers, coaches, and leadership. We'll focus on lower performing schools. This item is also in the efficiency study. I had to pick one category. So I think that's student achievement is certainly one of our goals, and so I think that's very important to be here in this category. The guidance
This particular component was in conversation in the efficiency study where he highlighted executive director position, but additionally highlighted specialist positions to support the work at the schools, particularly lower performing schools.
and 2 additional guidance counselors for 2 schools to meet the 300-to-1 ratio. So with this, there were 3 in the original budget request on April 23rd. This adds an additional 2 guidance counselors, and this allows us to meet all of the requested positions to meet that 300-to-1 ratio. And then finally, in the student achievement section, we originally identified 15 teacher positions to cut and move, or actually not to cut, but to reallocate to other special revenue funding sources. I believe, again, those funding sources are non-recurring funds. They're going to be gone in 2 years. This is a preference to keep these positions in the general fund, continue to fund them, and not to lose those positions within a couple of years. But they would be providing direct interventions. They would be used to reduce class size and potentially expand the early childhood program. So these are available, and we will be discussing in coming months where to place those positions should these items remain in the budget. And finally, in the categorical areas, district support, instructional services, we're restoring 3 positions. These were cut in a couple of years ago. There were positions cut in the department, but there is a need for support in the areas of fine arts, gifted and talented, and health and physical education. And then restoring other departmental reductions that we have made in the original version of this budget. We did cut back some increases that were requested, and this allows some of that increase to go. Some of what we cut out can go back into and support the instructional services division. Human resources, I heard loud and clear that it was time for a salary and compensation study. I think it was important for me to make sure that the funding was available in case the board and the administration move forward with that study. And so there is funding in here for the study, and then there are some supplies that are needed by human resources for just normal operations. And finally, 1 position to support the transportation office. There's a lot of automation occurring with our bus stop, our GPS systems, and our trip tracker for athletic trips and field trips, and overall communications for parents about their children who are being transported via bus. So there is a need for additional support to those information systems technology. So the next slide provides a summary of those increases. And I realized that 2020, 21 budget on the top of the first row on the left side is not accurate. That should be where we started as of April 23rd. So this is not the prior year budget now, or this is, but the information, all of the other information is accurate there. Just a wrong date. So overall, this budget is an additional 9.2 million beyond what we have looked at primarily in March and April. It is a $20 million increase overall and 7.9%. So the proposed budget is $274,274,600. So, and then we break those down into three major categories. We always want to make sure that, the focus of our work is instruction and instructional support. And $196,000 of this budget is in that category, and 71% of this budget. Leadership and other, 28.5, and operations at about 50 million. So those are the major categories and breakdown. And this document refers to a handout in the second document that I posted in Board Docs. So it was a very detailed budget with the descriptions of what increases and decreases were occurring. So this is the high level categories that are seen in detail in the handouts. And as summarizing the budget, we are looking on the next slide, the budget summary. Overall revenue changes, local revenues up would be an increase of 13.6 million, state revenue about 5 million. So that makes up the areas of funding for this budget, totaling an increase in revenues of 21 million. And the increase in expenditures is about 20 million as well. We are presenting a balanced budget this year. Our current year's budget has a budgeted use of fund balance. We're bringing forward a balanced budget to you this year with no increases or decreases in the fund balance. So it would remain as is, intact. And that balanced budget is required of operational expectation 5. So with the needed increases comes the need for additional support on the local side. As I mentioned earlier, about 23% of our current state funding is our EFA portion of state revenues is 22%. And so there is a need for additional taxes in order to support the budget and to move the needle on student achievement. And so I provided some scenarios of the impact on the taxpayer, approximately $114 on a $250,000 second home or property, non-owner occupied, and then $182 on an estimated $400,000 property. Again, those are on not on residential homeowners; they're on those that are imposing 6 or 10% and the other assessment ratios. So the final area I wanted to mention in the PowerPoint is supplemental federal funds. So the school district has received a number of different sources of federal funds in response to COVID-19. And you've seen these a few times over the course of the last few months. We received the coronavirus relief funds. Then the ESSER 2 is elementary and secondary school emergency relief funds. The latest was the ARPA funds of $50.9 million. We were informed, I believe it was just last week, that our allocation is $50.9 million of the new funding source. So that is pretty monumental. And we are in the very early stages of beginning to plan for those funds. So we have spent almost all of the CRF funds. in this small category, in the same small circle here. Of the ESSER 1, we have about 1.2 million remaining to spend. And ESSER 1 and ESSER 2. ESSER 2, we have spent about $720,000 so far, and primarily in the after-school 2.0 program. But that plan has not had final approval from the state yet. We are, the plan has been submitted, and we are waiting, and any day now we will receive the final word that plan has been approved. And they've asked a few questions, but we are anticipating that to come any day. And then the most recent funds, we are just beginning to receive guidance on these funds and to start building a plan for the use of those resources. The latest ARPA funds expire in September 2024. So overall, in the federal fund categories, we've spent about $7.7 million in the last year. And the allowed categories are very similar in all of the items. So we could go to slide 27. The primary reason for the funding is to address learning loss. So a majority of the funds need to be able to provide that. And so far, we more than enough meet that expectation. We haven't brought the ESSER 2 application forward. As soon as that approval comes, we will be bringing that forward for the board to review. And that is, again, over 60% of the total spending is in the category of learning loss. Our ARPA funds also provide, as the others do, professional development. We can do a number of things with that, as well as educational technology. It's used to address returning face-to-face safely. I think we've already addressed that, and we want to. It addresses planning and implementing summer learning and after-school programs. It provides mental health services and enhanced sanitation efforts and our indoor air quality issues. Any indoor air quality issues that may be present. So those are the primary categories that we must follow. So we have to constantly remind ourselves that there's 2 school years worth of funding there. And so we want to be cognizant of things that are non-recurring, and to make sure that those are the sorts of things that we're using for those funding sources. So at this point, we are looking for just continue with input from the board, and then we will be building after this evening's meeting and further direction, we will be going to build a virtual budget forum. And so that will be coming next with the latest information. And then we will need to be getting together with the county officials to talk to them some more and begin the discussions about our budget. And so before I close, I want to point out a couple of items in the handout I provided. So I have circled a few things. Let's start with page 19. Page 19 provides the comparative budget for the general fund. So let me step back for a moment and talk to you about why we did this big document. Each year, with the exception of last school year, we develop a budget document. We call it the budget book. And we post it on our website. And what you're seeing in this document is the documents that this will look very familiar when we get done. So this is the very beginning, and it has a lot of information in it about the budget process and how the allocations are provided to schools and departments. And then it gets into the financial section with all the numbers. And then toward the back is an informational section of various items like the proposed teacher salary schedule versus in a comparative format with this year, history of various things that we funded over the years and how the cost of living and historical changes have occurred as well. Probably most important for me to mention this evening is the debt service budget on page 31, 30, 31, and 32. This year, after our conversations last year regarding debt service, we did find that in our administrative rules, there is actually a document, or excuse me, OS2 requires that the superintendent recommend an annual operating, which is the general fund, a debt service, and capital budgets for approval by the board. Now, capital budgets are approved when those come about, 8% or referendum. But in the past, we have not specifically approved the debt service budget. So they, based on legal advice, I was recommended this year to move forward, provide the information on the debt service budget, provide those backup documents, inform the board of what the millage currently is and if there are any changes, and there are not any proposed changes. And that's something that we'll be looking for certification for on May 18th, or the next time the board is going to have that board certification. So they will come in two separate motions, recommended motions, one for the general fund, one for the debt service fund. So the debt service is much simpler on a financial statement than the general fund. It's pretty much tax revenue coming in, a little bit of state revenue, and a lot of principal and interest payments going out, and that's about it. So what you see here is all the detail, every line of the detail that is in that budget. And so as well as the cash flow analysis that we provide to the county auditor's office to support need for the 36.3 mils of debt service funds. So we'll bring those forward, and we're working with council on how to prepare the ordinance. If any modifications need to be made with the county's ordinance for the separation of those two topics, general fund and debt service. So we'll be looking forward to having more conversations about that. So with that, I think I can pause here and take any questions you may have.
Ms. Didrich?
Crosby, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate all of this. I believe that what we expressed and questions we asked at the last one, you have certainly answered and brought forward a very comprehensive view of this year's budget. I really just wanted to ask a question so I could take this mask off, but that's not true. On page 13, security guards. Is the state not providing any funding for, I'm sorry, back in the very beginning, the first PowerPoint, not the handout. It says $905,000 for security guards. Is the state, I mean, if those are SROs, is the state not providing some more additional funds for SROs?
There is a portion of the bill that has to do with safety officers or SROs. We don't know how many Beaufort will be allocated. We have been allocated 2 in the past year. So my hope is that we will have that. If we do receive it, the funding goes straight to the law enforcement agency and not through the district. So they will be on, say, the town of Bluffton or the city of Beaufort or the sheriff's office. It will be on the municipalities. They will receive revenues and pay that SRO. So there could be funding, but we don't know at this point whether there will be. What we can do, since this would be the security officer, security personnel, will be contracted role. They can be replaced with an SRO, a law enforcement officer, and then we would then experience savings in our budget as a result.
So bottom line,
One more.
unless someone else wants to
Oh, can we
take
get
their mask off.
We have a bunch in the queue.
Great, then I'll just do one more, thank you. On page 15, where it says instructional services, restore previous departmental reductions, can you point us to the handout where that is given a little more information?
I don't have a detail of that today, but I can certainly provide it for the next meeting.
Kathy Robine?
Thank you. My question is also on page 15. The first line, restore 3 positions to support fine arts, gifted and talented, health and physical education. Can you tell me, maybe Dr. Stratos, which of our areas, subject areas have support? I don't think social studies has one anymore. So who has it and who doesn't?
Good evening, Mrs. Robine. At this currently, we have a math and science coordinator, literacy, and the Melissa Murray director. We just onboarded teaching and learning director, whose specialty is social studies, so she will cover that area as well. We're technically, well, Thursday would be Mrs. Dillard's last working day. Friday is her last official day. She has been handling fine arts and gifted and talented for us. That was part of the request for those 2 positions right there. We have not been able to service health and physical education. So that's the justification for those requests.
Thank you.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
it sounds like they're all covered at this point then, the major areas.
With this.
With this, right?
Mr. Mel Kimball?
Stuff going on in the mind, but what would you say to a critique of this saying that we give you directives to come back with much more concrete, energetic budget towards student achievement, and the appearance is that you padded the budget with staff that you were going to do without, and still were proposing the same level of student achievement before we actually come back. Now that's the question. That's a rhetorical question in terms of what I see here, relative to student achievement. First of all, the 15 staff, you have 15 staff members that you're going to reassign. Apparently, you're going to reassign them. There was lost position before, right? Lost positions that now are going to be reassigned. What are the quality of that, reassignment process is what I would have a question about. If they were expendable and now you're pushing them into other areas, I suppose, not other areas.
No, so what we would be doing is advertising for particular specialist positions to go towards. I'm going to call them specialist positions, okay? But what I'm trying to get at is you understand what I'm trying to say? Okay. And we're going to target our lower performing schools to provide that additional support in there.
Just wanted to make sure it's not the same 15 people.
No.
We're salvaging their positions and moving them to other areas of the district.
No, it's agnostic of that. right? This is about, a strategic, personnel for the lift ahead, if that makes sense.
Okay, I don't want to get into the details of the other staff, but another question I have is I calculated it to be $70 billion ESSER or other funding from feds for over the next 2 years, I suppose, right?
Yes.
And that averages about 35 billion per year. And I'm not sure you showed me anywhere how we're gonna utilize that. And you're saying you're gonna come up with a plan. How we,
Well, I would say remember that amount was just given to us. We didn't know what that amount was going to be.
no, therefore the 50 was just given to you.
Yeah.
You had a 22. All the time, we spent less than $1 million of that.
But the 22 hasn't been approved.
Well, the 22 million.
So if we spend the 22 million and the plan comes back and it's not approved, now we got to figure out how to find 22 million, right?
No, I want the plan. What's the
No, no.
plan? I mean,
No, I understand. What I'm saying is, if you spend that 22 million and the state comes back and says that plan's not approved, now you got to figure out what to do with 22 million, right? I mean, I was just at a roundtable this week with my colleagues across the state, and they're all in the same situation because they're waiting to get their plans approved, so that they can then move forward.
So are you saying that you already have a plan on how to spend 22 million?
We have a plan on where we allocated the 22 million to be spent within their budget, and we want to make sure that they approve that spending, right?
The bucket's okay. That doesn't say anything to us except you got a way to spend the money.
We're going to spend it.
Okay.
And strategic. And strategic.
Yeah, okay, there's where
And appropriate.
there is where I want the answer.
Two things.
Strategically, how does it cross-reference
So
the budget?
one opportunity, which is expensive, right? As an example, is the potential to extend the learning day, particularly at our elementary schools and particularly at our low performing schools, right? And so we want to see how far we can take that, right? In order to more learning time, right?
Okay.
That makes sense.
And you're gonna see whether they're gonna approve that kind of thought process.
Yeah.
Okay. Done.
Hi.
Ingrid Boatwright. Thank you, and I just want to say, Mr. Campbell, I did read all the materials, so if this question, it doesn't seem well informed, it's just from a lack of understanding, from a lack of preparation. But I know that one of the things that we talk about is expanding, and it's in here, expanding early childhood preschool. And I know that we had a meeting recently where the board basically voiced a desire to, and I know there's some political bills that are coming through. Does this budget address any of that, or is it kind of all the expansion of the pre-K on hold? Like, where are we on that process?
So there is a small amount of increase in early childhood programs within this budget, but there also are other resources. The 15 positions, for example, can be placed with a plan of specific areas to expand certain areas that have space currently. So we do have the flexibility of using that. I believe it was $1.2 million potentially for early childhood program expansion. And then we are looking to build a longer term plan so that we have multiple years. Any expansion on the southern side of the river would require facilities. The northern side might need a reconfiguration of some sort, but we would have more space on this side. So we're looking forward to a plan coming forward from the early childhood office of multi-years of where the needs are and how we can expand and greater serve that population or that grade level students.
So what I'm understanding is you're saying this budget kind of starts to take a look at that,
Yes.
but there's a long-term view down the road. Okay,
Yes.
that's what I was kind of trying to get at. Thank you.
So, piggybacking on what Ingrid just asked, so what, for example, with the 1.2 million, I mean, can you sort of, quantify what that would, how that would apply to early childhood? Like that would allow, I don't know, 30 more students to attend? I mean, I have no idea. What is, can you give me something concrete to?
Well, the early childhood class size maxes out at 20 students per class size. So there are opportunities on the northern side of the Broad to shift students or make space for potentially a larger number of students that may become eligible for early childhood. So we do have space to offer those programs. We just need to make sure, get more interest and recruit more students to come forward. And then on the southern side, space is certainly an issue for early childhood programs. So we would need to address more of an intervention style opportunity there. Dr. Rodriguez.
I believe recently the current administration
The PowerPoint were excellent, and I really think you and Dr. Rodriguez and the senior administrative staff really listened to what the board brought up at the last meeting, and I thank you, all of you that worked on it. See, Mr. Smith?
Hello, how you doing? I would just like to start by saying I would thank with the staff for this presentation. I just have a couple questions. One of the questions is that when it comes,
Mr.
yes,
Smith,
ma'am.
trouble hearing you.
Yeah.
So maybe you're breaking up a lot. So I don't know if you can have your mouth closer to your microphone. I'm not sure what will help. But can you just start again, please?
Can you hear me now?
Way better.
Okay, thank you. One of my questions is, when regards to, first I said I would like to thank Dr. Rodriguez and Mrs. Crosby for this PowerPoint presentation. Job well done. But in addition to that, I do have a couple of questions, and one of my questions are in terms of, I heard what he was what his comments was to Mr. Campbell, but my follow-up question will be, well, now that you know how much money that you're receiving, when can the board expect a comprehensive plan to how they want to move forward with the money that they will receive?
now that we know we're tackling a lot of that work right now to look at that 50 million. And to make sure that the expenditures on that would be strategic, that fall within the appropriate use of those dollars. And the primary focus is going to be around student achievement and efforts to improve outcomes for kids. So whether that be in the way of professional development needed, whether that be extending the learning day, those kinds of things.
And maybe I didn't ask my question around clear, but my question was, I hear those things, but my question is, when can the board expect a comprehensive plan of what processes and procedures will be taken? How will they move? How will you and your staff move forward with the funding?
Yeah, we're working on that plan, and we'll be continuously working on that plan. I don't have a definitive date for you to say you're going to get it on May 30th or on June, 15th, at the moment, but it is top priority for us to make sure that we get that laid out so we can get to work on executing them.
Okay, I definitely be looking forward to seeing that.
We will definitely bring that back to the board.
Thank you. I definitely appreciate that. And my other question is, when we talk about the 2% raise for the classified administrators, can we classified staff consist of who?
There's a wide array of positions in that category. They would include school bookkeepers. They would include bus drivers. They
Teacher assistants.
teacher assistants, guidance assistants.
Okay, and
Staff in the offices of the schools, administrative or classified staff here in the district office building.
And the reason why I was asked that because I had someone who had asked me that after the last meeting, and I kind of explained that, but I wanted it maybe to be possibly to be explained again if people were listening, because my question that would go along with that is if we're given and if we included administration in on the 2% raise. Are we giving them a bigger raise than what we're giving the teachers? I mean, that's just a question.
2% is a proportionate or a percentage of the base salary of the individual. And so across the board would provide different amounts of increases for different levels of salary. So everyone would be subject to a certain percentage on the salary table that's currently in place for the positions.
Okay, and yeah, I understand.
For us to move to somebody else, thank you for your questions. Mr. Geyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On page 19, the impact of the taxpayer, I think it's important to point out something that will be brought up. Home renters, people that rent homes, their landlord is going to be paying this amount of money, and businesses. So if you have a rental property worth $250,000 assessed value or less, you're going to be paying $114 a year. That means that you will raise the tenant's rent, if you did it 1-to-1, for $9.50 a month. You got a $400,000 house that you're renting out. You're going to raise that renter's rent up at $15.20 a month. You know, I hear a lot about affordable housing and how we are not, we can't raise these taxes and it will hurt affordable housing. Well, think about who is renting these homes. These are not property owners. These are renters that are living in these homes. They don't pay operational costs because they don't own property. So that's their contribution. An extra $10 a month for a low-priced rental property. So, you know, I don't have a lot of sympathy when I hear people that say, well, it's on the back of our poorest folks. Well, yes, it will be a $10 a month tax. But I'll bet you that the landlords raise it more than $10 a month and blame us for that. So just look at that and understand the per month cost to the average owner. The other thing on the teacher pay, you need to show where we were for teacher pay 10 years ago in the state and where we are now for teacher pay in the state. We used to be either number 1 or number 2 for teacher salary in the state. Last briefing we got, we are in the lower quarter of the state. So that's another reason why this teacher salary is going to be so important, because we're going to have to recruit and retain teachers. And salary is a major portion, especially in the recruiting piece. So this is something that we have to be able to state to our constituents, that teacher pay is something that we've got to keep on top of. And we're doing that. We're addressing part of it. with this budget. We got more to go. Thank you.
Dr. Wisniewski?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I just have three quick statements and perhaps looking for a little bit of guidance. I feel like these are probably going to be questions that come down from either the public or from County Council as we continue to run through this. And one of them, and to Colonel Geyer's point about the increase in the salary and where we used to be and where we are now, is I think that we need to be cognizant of the optics of increasing that pay and at the same time allocating money to do a salary and compensation study. It's almost as if some might say you're putting the cart before the horse. But I think providing that data, like Colonel Geyer pointed out, of where we were and where we are now will really help to address that. And I don't know if there's a way that that can be incorporated into the presentation that goes, but I think it's a really relevant point. And kind of to that same vein, the increase in potential staffing and things like that coming from the survey or the study that we had done. Even though we've seen a decline in enrollment, I just want to make sure that there's preparation for that to be something that's brought up probably in conversations in the future. Lastly, in regard to the ESSER and ARPA expenditures, I know Mr. Smith briefly touched on when are we going to see that. I think that kind of goes into the whole public perception and conversation of, well, the school districts are getting all this money, what are they spending it on? And I know that I've gotten that question a lot recently of, how much money and what are you guys doing with it and blah, blah, blah. So I want to make sure that those conversations are sooner rather than later, since we're going through the budget talks, because I think that the general public needs to know how those dollars are being expended and how those impact or don't impact our budget. But that's all I have, just some points to consider. Thank you.
Dr. Rodriguez?
Dr. Wisniewski, thank you for those thoughts. I think because I think those are some things we can incorporate into the presentation and the conversation to try to answer questions ahead of time. And so I think it's really relevant. I think one thing we probably should stress even more than we did today, because we know you know it, but as we communicate with the public, I think it's important to do that. Is that one of those step increases was a step increase that our teachers never got, right? And that's an important component that I think is important for people to realize. I think another thing that's also really important is that every school district across the state, every school district, I'm going to say across this country, right? It has experienced or is experiencing loss of teachers who decided to retire or any number of reasons they're not it, right? Concerns over the pandemic, what have you, right? The competition for attracting and recruiting talent and maintaining talent within your district was always, or has been for many, many years, stiff, right? Even more so as we move into the future. And we want to be able to make sure that we can recruit, that we can retain, that we can, and I know it's not all salary, right? There's cultural components and things like that you work on that support that work. But you got to get them here. And you want high quality that you're trying to bring in. And so I think those are the kinds of things that we need to highlight probably even more as we move through it. So I appreciate your comments because I think there's opportunity to drive that home.
Mr. Earl Campbell?
Yes, I agree with everything Dr. Rogers just said, and other board members. For too long, we have not educated our children and they want to pay the taxes for them. And many of the places that hire people in this county, they don't get a decent wage. You know, I don't mind paying my tax bill. I don't have a child in school. I had 5 that went through the system, 2 grants, and I'm proud of the education that they get. But the thing that we don't address, and I'm talking about this board, I'm talking about the taxpayer of this county. We don't address bringing in large companies to help us with these taxes. And I know people say, well, we don't need other big companies. Because you know how much property we have in this county that is vacant? All the counties around us, they always bring in businesses. But Beaufort County, sure, they bring in a few at the park out there near me. But I'm talking about a large company that wanted to come here years ago. And many of the folks that say, they want to keep it rural. You know, you have folks that been living here for all their life and has property. They can't even develop their own property because of county planning issues in this county and the council. So that is something that we need to talk about. Talk about the last 20 years. But nobody want to listen. You know, I mean, if you want a educated community, a safe community, you got to pay for it. Because if you don't, they will, if you don't educate your children, they're going to end up in jail. And not only that, they will take whatever little few money that you have. You think that's not true. You know, you may live in a gated community, but they will come in the community and take what you have. So I think what we need to do is push hard on the delegation, the county council, planning department, bring in jobs in this county to put people to work. And so they can help with the tax to educate children. Thank you.
Mr. Smith?
Mr. Campbell, I actually agree with everything that you said. I definitely agree with that. I've been talking to different people in the community, and one of the things that they have asked me about we're talking about these about positions in the district and funding. When will we be bringing back the custodians? I've said that last time. I think it's very important, you know, that we bring back the custodians in house and that we stop contracting that work out. I think that you would then get people who will not only just work for the district, but you will get community members who will have a different type of buy-in. Not saying that other companies don't now, but you will also get more members of the community to work in some of these schools who are familiar with the community members and who are willing to go above and beyond to help out in different ways. So that is just something that I've had a lot of people have asked me, when will we consider bringing the custodians back? And that's something I will ask Dr. Rodriguez and Mrs. Crosby. And I know we can't do it in this budget, supposedly, but hopefully the next budget, y'all can possibly bring back a proposal to what that may have cost us to bring the custodians back to work for the district as taxpayers as well. I'll just leave that. That's all I have. Thank you.
Ms. Boatright?
I'll be brief. I just wanted to respond to Mr. Campbell, who I agree with 100% about we need to get the taxpayers on board, which is sort of a theme here. But I just wanted, you know, you need a little carrot, you need a little stick. And you pointed out some stick. You know, we need to get these kids educated. We need to invest in them avoid, problems down the road. But I just briefly wanted to point out a little bit of carrot because I went to May River High School for the first time today, to the Student Advisory Council. Gorgeous school, wonderful kids, motivated, different backgrounds, different languages. And I had to say, I got a little emotive. It was very inspiring. So a little bit of carrot, that there, not only is it an investment in our future as far as what we need from children in the community, but I think that there's an investment in terms of raising these wonderful families and this being a great place to live. So I just kind of wanted to counterbalance that because it was really an inspiring morning. And I wish that more people could kind of see what is going on in the schools because I think they would want to fund that. So.
Ms. Didrich?
Tanya, can you walk me through a little exercise here? If I am this is my first year of teaching and next year will be my second year. What raises am I privy to given this budget?
With this budget, you would move to a step one. So there would be this year, there would be actually an increase of, I don't know the specific percentage, is somewhere between 1.7% and 2% would be the value of the step increase. So that is the restored step. The teacher, the school district, the state is also requiring an additional step increase. And then there's $1,000 on the base. So a teacher with a bachelor's degree that currently is in their first year would make $36,928, and they would move to a step one, which would be $38,741. So about almost a $2,000 increase there. Now, what's really powerful is the max step, and I'm really excited about that we're able to offer a step to all teachers. So that's really, thank you.
So a couple of comments. I think the supplemental federal funds for the in response to COVID-19, yes, it's a lot of money, and you've got a good page here in the handout, page 21, that says where that money can be allocated. But I think, and as you also pointed out tonight, Tanya, it's roughly got 2 more years and roughly 35 million each of those years you can sort of estimate it to be. But we also have to remember it's not recurring. And that is key, that it's not recurring. Especially like, for example, purchase education technology. Well, education technology costs a lot to keep up. A lot of times the initial outlay is, a fraction of the cost when you consider what the cost for keeping it up over several years is going to be. I just want to be sure the public realizes that. And I was thinking when I was preparing for this meeting, what's the most important thing that Beaufort County does? What should be the most important thing for Beaufort County? Educating its children. And that's, they're our future, they're our workforce. They're going to make this community great, especially if we can educate them well. And yes, it takes money, but it's not just money. It's good quality teachers and good quality support system. And I really think that what you presented here tonight puts emphasis on that, not just throwing money at the students or district or however you want to word it. Mr. Geyer.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Chair. The other issue that Tanya, I think you need to be aware of is cash flow, because we have to spend the money and then ask for it later. And that means when we're talking $50 million, we're going to have to really watch how we spend it, when we spend it, so that we don't get in the hole and don't have the sufficient funds in the fund balance to cover the bills. So that's going to be a major issue, I think, with this amount of money. So heads up.
Yes, we are already thinking about it. The tax anticipation note discussion generally happens in June with approvals for the fall tax anticipation note that we would need as a result of reduced cash flow. So we will certainly incorporate a schedule of spending for all the new federal funds in addition to the existing ones, based on a spend and receive reimbursement 3 or 4 months later sort of action. So we'll make sure to incorporate these federal funds into that cash flow analysis as we determine the amount that we will need in the fall. So we'll be bringing that back before the board within the next 6 weeks or so.
Mr. William Smith?
Also, my question was, when it comes to early childhood education, can you tell me how much money we've spent within the last 2 years?
Early childhood education is program code 139. And there is, in this budget, in the general fund, there is $5.9 million allocated to special, to early childhood. Did you say early childhood?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
$5.9 million this year. And there is 5.6 million budgeted in the current year. So about $10 million, a little over $10 million in the general fund over a 2-year period. In addition to the general fund, we have funding in EIA, Education Improvement Act funding for early childhood programs. And I do not have those numbers with me by chance. Do you call for allocation? I want to say it's about $700,000 at this time. And that would be per year. So 1.5 and 10, so about 12 million, I would say, to early childhood currently.
Okay. If you would, could you tell me how much? If you would, could you possibly share with me and the board in the form of email how much money we've spent in early childhood within the last 2 consecutive years prior to this year here coming up? I know you don't have those with you, so that's why I just asked. Would you mind going back and looking and letting me know that? I was the board as well.
Yes, sir. I'll do that.
Okay,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Dunn, I apologize. I thought you never put your hand down.
Good.
Oh, okay.
So I don't need to put it back on.
That's correct. It never went down. Okay, please go ahead. I apologize.
Yeah, I did want to speak again. That's why I left it out. Okay, one thing, Will's question kind of leads to the question I had. You mentioned last budget discussion that you had denied some wish list things from departments, like those principals, whoever else were involved in. And then come back with a lot of the things I guess were wish list things you covered this time. But most specifically, that's about the departments. Looking at some of those things, because in the process you said that you engage the department heads and they give you some kind of a summation of what they would need. And my first question would be, how many of those folks utilize all of the dollars that they requested last year? How many people came up that they didn't use all their money, and you decide that, this year's request was the reason behind that? And the reason I'm asking that is because, for example, early childhood, I would anticipate that they would always ask for more than you could give them. And that they've always got a forward-thinking process in which, we just don't have the funds or the facilities or the wherewithal to fund this early childhood program where it needs to be. But another topic, and I'm not picking on departments, I see where the human resources, and you said the efficacy study dictated that they needed more. Well, they asked for 4 new people now, but I didn't see that in the earlier budget request. And I'm saying 4 new folks for what? What was the forward thinking that was going on, that we didn't get some of that earlier. Because in my mind, we need to know what the thinking is so we can expect shortages and cutbacks on your part. And so those are the things that I'm thinking when I look at this. When I look at this, that's why I say, okay, now all of a sudden we need 4 new human resource people to recruit and retain. But that was the board's request, is retaining teachers. And it should have been something that the human resource should have pushed back and said, we can't do it unless you do this for us. But I'm just saying our process can become and had become stagnated. And I think we need to go a little bit more forward thinking in the process. That's all, that's my comment. All right.
Thank you. Otherwise, you're always at the top. There do not seem to be any other hands up. Okay, do you want to just cover next steps?
Yes, next steps. We've already begun to put together a virtual budget forum. It's going to be recorded, Dr. Rodriguez with comments and me with much of the same information you've already seen here today. We are working with our videographer to do that, and we'll be making sure that it's already got a plan on communications to put that out on our website, get it out on YouTube, and get it out to as many people as we can reach as possible. We've set up a new website, an email address. On the last slide of this presentation, it's actually a new email address, budget@Beaufort. And I can't see the rest of it because I don't have my glasses on. But with specific questions and comments.
budget@beaufort.k12.sc.us.
Yes, beaufort.k12.sc.us. So questions can go directly to that email address. And that is Jennifer Hamblin is our Director of Budget Procurement. That's her phone number. She couldn't be with us today for some other reasons, but it's been very actively involved, as Louis and Reggie have been as well, in the preparations for this budget. So that's what will be immediately coming forward. And then we'll be preparing, working with legal counsel on the ordinance for the budget that we'll bring a draft form to you on our next budget, our next board meeting of May 18th, as well as 2 motions and some final summary information. Some of the items you've requested here, including more information about at least ESSER 2 plan, which we do have a proposed plan, not a final or approved plan, but we can certainly bring that at very least forward back to you of the ESSER 2 funding. And we'll address some of the questions and comments you had today in our next presentation. And then on May 24th, I believe, Monday, May 24th is first reading with County Council. And I would imagine there's a Finance Committee meeting immediately preceding that at County Council chamber. So we're looking for certification on May 18th for both the general fund and the debt service budgets.
Thank you. Dr. Rodriguez?
No comment.
All right, then if we have unanimous consent, we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.